guys, what's up? Ragtter here, welcoming you back to Ladder Anxiety and the Pokemon trading card game online. Today I am bringing you a fun match that I had with my Garchomp deck against an opponent that I thought was going to be an easy pick-off, but ended up being a very tough opponent in the end, and I really enjoyed this game. But I did not enjoy my opening hand. As you can see here, I have no basic Pokemon, which means I have to mulligan. That also means my opponent gets to see my hand. And my opponent can see my Garchomp and my Garbodor. That basically tells my opponent exactly how I'm going to be running my deck. A very fast and aggressive offense with Garchomp, and preventing abilities with the use of my Garbodor. I do, after a second mulligan, get my Gible out there, but it does come at a cost, as my opponent is going to get to draw 2 cards, and that's currently what he's deliberating on. Does in the end decide to pick up the 2 cards, and flips over Manectric EX. I make that mistake all of the time. And gonna slap a Spirit Link down onto Manectric EX, gonna give it an energy, and that immediately tells me what my opponent wants to do. This is either a Ho-Oh deck or a Raikou deck, and I didn't catch what my opponent was using going into the game, so I'm kind of sitting here blind as a bat. Now, I have options to get out of this sticky situation, and getting Ultra Ball off my Acrobike is one of them, though I do immediately regret tossing that strong energy. I do, however, have the Professor's Letter, and I notice something wrong immediately. I run 4 copies of Fighting-type energy in this deck, and then 4 copies of Strong energy. There are only 2 basic energy in my deck. Otherwise, they would have shown up when I went to go get them with Professor's Letter. That means the other 2 are currently prized, and I can't get to them unless I start getting KOs. So I'm going to use my Ultra Ball, not to get Garchomp like you would think that I would, but instead I'm going to get a second Gible, because the Gible that's out there currently, it's going to get knocked out. It's a sitting duck out there, and there's nothing I can do in the time that I have to make that work. He's going to attach another energy next turn. Manectric's second attack does 60 damage, I just have to let that Gible go down. In the meantime, I'm going to use my Karina to get Garchomp and a rare candy. So I'm off on an okay footing, but it could be a lot better, and giving up a prize to my opponent is definitely not worth it. Well, definitely not optimal, it's kind of worth it. So my opponent gonna Mega Evolve right away, gonna slam down Shaman EX. Shaman's gonna get my opponent up to 6 cards in his hand. And that's never a good thing for you when you're in that situation, because your opponent having more cards gives them more possibilities, and more possibilities means more ways to take you out. So he's going to slap down another Manectric EX, going to attach an Assault Vest to it, so any special energy that I attach is basically going to have its damage reduced. I'm going to lose my Gible, he's going to get a prize, I'm going to put down my other Gible into the active slot now. So, now I have to rare candy, which lets me skip the Gabite stage of the Garchomp evolution, go right to Garchomp, and now I'm set up to knock out this Mega Manectric EX. But I need a backup plan. Without a backup plan, I can very easily lose this Garchomp. Well, maybe not to this deck, but in other cases. So I'm going to put down Hawlucha, I'm going to put down the Fighting Stadium, which is going to increase my Fighting type's attacks by 20 damage. I'm going to use my Trainer's Mail, and that's going to get me a Startling Megaphone, which will let me remove all of the items on my opponent's side of the board. Not the most useful right now, but it could come in handy later. I don't really have a very optimum setup though. Most of what I have is better in the late game, not so good here in the early game where I'm trying to get on my feet. But I do decide to use a Repeat Ball to go get a Garchomp so I can start setting up another Gible. I go right for the throat with Garchomp's attack. I'm going to knock Manectric EX out due to its severe Fighting type weakness, and that's going to net me 2 prize cards. So he's going to send out Shaman EX as death fodder basically, so he can start setting up his next Mega Evolution, maybe another Manectric EX. He's going to go for the Ultra Ball and go into his deck looking for, at this point, I was anticipating the Mega Manectric EX. He actually pulls another Shaman, which tells me that he's kind of hurting for cards right now. He's going to replace my Fighting Stadium with another Rough Seas, and then he's going to play down the Shaman EX, going to get a whole bunch of card draw, and he's not hurting for cards anymore, let me tell you what. Now this puts me into a very weird position, because again, I'm still trying to feel out what kind of deck he might be running. I don't know if it's a Ho-Oh deck, I don't know if it's a Raikou deck, I don't know if it's some weird combination that I haven't seen before, but him having that battle compressor told me a lot, and I actually didn't catch it the first time through. I had to go into his discard pile and go looking. It turns out he tossed another battle compressor and both of his Hex Maniacs. That tells me that he knows that my deck isn't relying on abilities at all, and he's just thinning his deck to get rid of any unnecessary supporter cards he could draw. So I'm dealing with a really, really smart opponent here, which is not good for me. It's fun to play against these opponents, but it's not good for my self-esteem if I lose. So, my opponent, trying to search for some energy with that Max Elixir, gonna decide to end his turn by Mega Evolving his Manectric EX. I get Lucario EX and decide to play that onto the board, and again, I really am at this position where I don't have anything that I particularly want to play. I do have the Versus Seeker though, so I'm gonna reach into my discard pile and pull out Karina. Then I'm gonna use Karina to go get Gibble and a rare candy, so I can start setting up another set of Garchomp. Like I said previously, this deck thrives on having an army of these things that are easy to set up, easy to attack with, and relatively difficult to take down. I'm going to slap an energy onto that Gibble. I'm going to put a Muscle Band onto my Garchomp, which is going to give me enough damage to take out the Shaman EX even through the resistance. So that's 2 more prize cards for me, and judging by how EX heavy my opponent's deck is, his next mistake could lose the game for him. So he has to play this very carefully. I'm kind of sitting pretty now after a really rough start in the beginning. Now he's going to Mega Turbo Lightning type energy onto Mega Manectric EX. He's going to play down this Jirachi, which can discard special energy and prevent the damage of my attacks. And he's going to Versus Seeker his Professor Sycamore. So he's going through his deck at a fairly ridiculous speed. Going to toss 2 more cards, one of which is another Manectric EX, Mega Manectric EX, sorry. Those 2, Mega Manectric EX. It's so hard to get those 2 straight. Then he plays down a Flash Energy. This is the worst of the worst case scenarios for me. That Flash Energy will negate the weakness of the Lightning type Pokemon it's attached to. That means my Garchomp is only going to be doing half as much damage as it normally would. That's terrible! Those things are so bulky! Most other Pokemon, when I've got all of the pieces set up, Garchomp can knock out in 1 hit. This Mega Manectric EX now has the upper hand on me. It has no damage on it, it's going to knock out my Garchomp before I can knock it out. So I'm going to use my Pokemon Fan Club to go get Trubbish and Gibble, hopefully so I can evolve Garbodor and stop him from using any more Shaman EXs, and that last Gibble so I can set it up into another Garchomp. Knowing that I'm going to lose this one, I just go for as much damage onto the Mega Manectric EX as I possibly can, and I've gotta just wait now, as my opponent decides to heal a bit of damage off the Mega Manectric EX, and slap another Flash Energy onto the Manectric EX! I'm not going to have enough damage to deal with these things. So he's going to go Ultra Ball, and by the way, I have cut out some parts of this game. My opponent takes a long time to make these kinds of decisions. But, again, I am now waiting for that big win condition, and he doesn't show it. He goes for another Manectric EX. And at that point, I'm wondering, is Mega Manectric his optimum win condition? And that's kind of weird to me. He goes for the Professor Sycamore, though. Again, almost out of cards now. And that's when he shows me the Raikou. That's what he wants to be setting up, and what he wanted to be setting up all along, and just really couldn't get off the ground with. So he's going to get an Assault Vest from his trainer mail, and he's going to decide to put it onto the Manectric EX he's currently setting up, and he's actually going to bring that to the front. And he's going to knock out my beloved Garchomp with it. This is pretty bad for me, but I do make a miscalculation here. I thought that because of its negated weakness, and because of my lack of Fighting Stadium, that I didn't have enough damage to deal with it. I'm going to go for the Acrobike, and that's going to let me get a Fighting Stadium. So now I'm thinking, okay, I'm closer, but in my head, I'm still giving this thing the same amount of HP that Mega Manectric EX has. With my Fighting Stadium, with my Strong Energy, with my Pokemon EX amplifying effect from Garchomp's second attack, I do have enough damage to take it out, and by continuing to take my turn and not claim the victory, I looked like a tool in front of my opponent. But I miscounted! I thought it was different. I'm sorry. That was my bad. I do that pretty often. I get into the mindset where it's like I have to do everything I possibly can before I attack or I'm gonna lose. But that's not a bad mindset to have. It just, when a game is closing out, it can make you look a bit like a tool. But if you guys have enjoyed this match, then please let me know with a like and a comment down below telling me just how much fun you've had. Leave suggestions for future decks in other episodes, and I will see you guys next time when we return. Until then, be sure to take care and have a good one. Bye-bye!